Necromancy was released on August 7th, meaning we're just about 2.5 weeks into the release of RuneScape's newest combat skill. In the past 2.5 weeks, I've delved into large chunks of the skill, including rituals, AFK combat, low intensity bossing, and some minorly high intensity bossing. So for this week's video, I thought it'd be fun to go through the 5 things that I love and hate about Necromancy. So let's start with the positives and the 5 things that I love most about this skill.
Number 1. Clarity on souls.
With the new combat style, there's a few different resources we need to manage, being Adrenaline, Soul Stacks, and Necrosis Stacks. With the Soul Stacks, we see these 3 little dots below our health bar, meaning we don't have to have our eyes darting back and forth between the boss to our abilities to our buff bar and all over the place trying to figure out what we're going to be doing next. We can plan our rotations quite a bit easier because there's a lot of valuable information readily available on our character. I don't know if I've said this in a video before, but I know I have definitely talked about it with friends. About one of my biggest complaints with the Bow of the Last Guardian being the fact that our eyes have to keep going back and forth to the buff bar to our character to know how many stacks that we have. There's in fact even an Alt-1 toolkit plugin that will have the stacks be bigger on your screen. Having something like this would make bow usage a lot more manageable and something I definitely hope they do for range. I know I've said I wanted something like this a long time ago. But for every right, we know there has to be a wrong. And with that, I mean the Necrosis stacks. They're currently only shown on the buff bar. However, this has been confirmed to be something that they're looking into how to display them better, which once implemented will definitely give this skill extra bonus points and things that I love about this skill and combat style.
Number 2. Story-based progression.
The second thing I love about this skill is the fact that it's story-based progression. The skill itself feels like an adventure through the different quests, the needing to build our own armor and weapons, and talking to Killy to learn how to build them, going through different bosses using Necromancy. It truly feels like we're learning alongside of our character and 100% helps build the immersion when it comes to learning this combat style.
Number 3. Upkeep.
If you've been following this channel, you know that I am an Iron Man. In my opinion, one of the worst parts of late game combat with every combat style, especially for Iron Man, is maintaining the proper resources. While it isn't so bad for melee outside of the abyssal spikes, Mage and range have constantly felt bad for combat upkeep. Mage has been a bit better since the Fractured Staff of Armadyl rework, but nothing has felt as good as the upkeep for Necromancy. Yay! It's by no means free between the runes usage, the ectoplasm, and of course, the dreaded ink. But it is by no means an unreasonable amount of time spent doing upkeep. Do a few hours and you're set for far more hours of PVM than you spent doing upkeep, which is not a common occurrence in modern day RuneScape. I feel like this is exactly how combat time to prep time should be balanced.
Number 4. Upgrade accessibility.
In every combat style, it feels like the entry to get into PVM is typically tier 70 gear. For my personal range, melee, and magic sets, it took me somewhere between 500 and 600 kills of their respective bosses in order to get this gear. Sure, if you're a main, you can spend a few million coins, but for most accounts, the startup is simply a daunting task. For Necromancy, that's no more. 5 Calphite Queen kills and 5 Queen Black Dragon kills. That's it. Perhaps throw in some Hermod in as well if you're looking to get the armor. Now, if you're a new player, this may actually seem like a challenge, but it's by no means a daunting or unreasonable task to get these unlocks. In fact, I'd argue that they're kind of fun and rewarding to unlock. Even tier 80 doesn't feel bad, and while tier 90 is a challenge, it doesn't feel like an insurmountable task.
Number 5. Ease of entry.
This skill is tailor-made to be easily learned. It's a fantastic combat style to try to learn manual combat with because of the useful auto, clarity in combat, and ease of improvisation. Not only that, but the skill does a fairly good job of teaching you how abilities work in tandem with one another. It's very easy to pick up and learn, making combat far more accessible to the general player base. And now, let's move on to
things I hate. Number 1. Lack of a Runepouch.
Necromancy uses 4 different runes which are used in all of our incantations. 4 spaces used up in every single combat encounter. If we want access to some of the most fun parts of Necromancy, we need those runes. There's a ton of incantations that can be used, and they all have plenty of uses inside of different boss fights. It would be very beneficial if they found a way to implement a Necromancy Runepouch, and I sincerely hope that a Runepouch akin to the Crosis Runepouches for Magic are created for Necromancy.
Number 2. Rituals.
I hate rituals. I hate that active rituals are the best XP. I hate the amount of tedium involved with rituals. I hate the soul collecting required to unlock talents or do quests. I hate how much time I have to spend on that goddamn pedestal. If the XP was not so heavily balanced around disturbances, it wouldn't feel so bad on missing out on those, making AFK rituals far more realistic and not feel as bad to do AFK. I feel like rituals would be far better if this was possible, which brings me to my next point.
Number 3. XP balance.
The game of RuneScape typically follows a set of rules when it comes to gaining XP in a skill. High input gives high output, low input gives low output, and the middle is somewhere in the middle. In terms of viable skills, the highest XP methods always cost the most money. For non-viables, the highest effort method gives the most XP. Necromancy is no exception. However, the numbers feel very heavily favored to one over the other, almost to the point where it actually feels bad to not be training a skill actively. In the current state, actively doing rituals is high and above the best way to train the skill, and it should be. However, it is so much better that if you train it any other way, it feels like you're wasting your time. Almost like you should train something else during your AFK time and come back to training necromancy with rituals during active gameplay time, which is simply not fun, as I've stated before. This is because the mass bulk of the XP comes from disturbances. This, again, is something that is being addressed as confirmed in a recent stream. However, if all they do is nerf the disturbance XP, it just kills rituals outside of unlocks, which I truly hope they do not do, because again, it brings rituals to the point of nuisance. What I would like to see is some of that XP be weighted into the actual completion of a ritual, making AFKing them not feel so awful, but still placing a high value on actively doing them, leaving the current semi-AFK combat method as the nice middle ground it is. So editing Funk here. I recorded a lot of this video on the night of Thursday, August 24th. It is currently Friday, August 25th in the mid-afternoon. Jagex did indeed release a news post saying this is exactly the change that they're going to be making in regards to the rituals. So rather than changing up number 3, I figured I would just put this right here and say it is indeed what they're doing, and kudos to Jagex so that I don't have to think of a number 3.
Number 4. Conjure wonkiness.
Conjures are some of the coolest parts of Necromancy, but ultimately they feel like they're in a very strange place. As of right now, we only really use them at the start of a fight and when we drop combat, outside of the amazing Skeleton Boy, because that man just slaps. The reason for this is they simply cost too much adrenaline for what they provide. I can't think of a time when burning that much adrenaline feels like it's okay to do so. Also, conjuring them doesn't gain us adrenaline either. In fact, most of the time it costs us adrenaline, and they use a global cooldown. Personally, what I would like to see them do is take a damage nerf for the ghost and the zombie and allow us to conjure them off of global cooldown, since that does not give us adrenaline, and take away their adrenaline cost. Perhaps a mix of these things, since it would probably be a bit OP giving us all of these. But in the end, they need to make them feel useful to use outside of just being a setup practice for the fight.
Number 5. Ease of combat.
I know what you're thinking, but Funk, didn't you say you like that about the skill? Well, yeah, however, it feels like it's almost too rewarding for the amount of work you put into it. If you haven't seen, someone put up a video of getting a rootling skip at Solak with only using 8 buttons, and one of those buttons was Reflect. Now, I'm not saying the skill shouldn't be able to keep up with the other styles, but it should have a lower ceiling in comparison, especially since it's designed to have a much higher floor. I talked about my theory prior to the release of the skill in a podcast I did with Let's Discuss RS, link in the description below, and in it I had said that I don't expect this skill to be meta, because I don't see how you can make a combat skill be easier to learn and have the skill expression and intricacy required for the kinds of tricks you need in order to make it keep up with the other styles. Well, Jagex proved me wrong, but they didn't include the skill expression or intricacy. Instead, they went with overloading damage numbers. Well, I guess I was technically half right. The skill ceiling is down, however it doesn't matter since it's able to keep up and in many cases outperform the best in slot weapon setups when used optimally for the other styles. Now, before you guys all come at me with your pitchforks and torches, I do not, let me reiterate, do not want to see the skill be gutted in terms of combat. However, I would like to see the other styles be stronger based on the amount of work needed to be done in comparison. Whether that means more abilities for Necromancy in order to tweak some damage values lower, or more abilities in order to create more intricacies in the skill, giving it a higher ceiling, justifying the numbers, something should be done. I sincerely hope it's not so much to gut the skill out of relevance, but I would like to see the other styles be brought up to snuff. So there's my list. What do you guys think? Is there something that I missed that you really like about the skill? Is there something that I missed that you really don't like about the skill? Am I just dead wrong in everything that I've said? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys soon. Oh wait, I almost forgot.
Be sure to like and subscribe.